Hi, good morning. So I'm here today to talk about the biggest transformation in value creation and networking in 25 years. This isn't a minor market transition, as people talk about, that we've seen in the past, but yet a massive market transformation where new technology and new leaders are going to emerge. So what I'd like to do is actually share some examples of about 6 different leading customers that are driving this transformation already, as well as talk to you why Nicira is going to become the dominant networking player in the next 25 years. So of course, obviously the session here is cloud. That's the transformation that I'm talking about. You look at the models of computing, they're changing again, right? We've seen the transition from the mainframe to the client server computing model. That's been the last 25 years. My entire career has been building client server networks. We are at the beginning of another one of those massive transformations. Why? Because of the massive cost savings and agility gained by the operational efficiencies of the cloud model. But like most transformations, the infrastructure must change. And how must that change? And when I talk about the infrastructure, what I'm talking about is compute, storage, and networking. Those are the 3 legs of the computing infrastructure that have to change. And the change that is necessary actually has started in compute and storage. And that change is actually taking the intelligence, moving it out of the hardware and putting it into software and virtualizing that infrastructure. And once you do that, you can now treat the physical hardware as a resource pool of capacity, a generalized resource that I now can virtualize, and all the intelligence now moves into software. We are seeing software-defined infrastructures. You fast forward and you look at the 3rd leg of the stool and you look at the network. What about the network? You know what? The network hasn't changed in frickin' 25 years, since I was at Synoptics in 1985, right? It's a little faster, it's not as many protocols, but for the most part, you build networks the same way you did 25 years ago. Guess what? This has to happen. We have to transform networks to where the intelligence has to be pulled out of the hardware and has to be put up into the software. You cannot deliver the cost nor the agility of the cloud model unless you do this. This is the operational model that has to happen. We've seen what VMware has done for compute. We see a lot of different companies doing the same thing in storage, and Nicira is going to do the same thing on the network. As Jillian said, if you remember one thing and one thing only about Nicira, we're going to virtualize the network like VMware did for servers. It's going to be that big. So when you now get compute, storage, and network, all 3 parts of the infrastructure virtualized with the intelligence moved up into software, you get that cost that you need, and you get, more importantly, the agility that you need. And it has massive implications in terms of value creation and change that's going to happen in networks. The Google, biggest network on the planet, is redesigning their entire WAN and data centers based on Nicira technology. Why is that? They tried about 5 years ago to do exactly what we're doing and failed. It's actually a really hard problem. They came to us 2 years ago when we were actually only 10 guys and said, I see what you're doing. I want to help. I want to be a part of it. I want to co-develop with you. Will you do that with us? And we said, absolutely. Why do they want to do that? Because they want to get massive cost savings. They want more programmatic control over the network. Google controls their entire infrastructure in a very, very detailed way. They let loose their application developers, their programmers, their software developers, and they control all parts of the infrastructure. The network was the last one. And then, so they get the cost, and they get the application performance, and then they get the operational efficiencies. Cannot do it without the technology from Nicira. And when you want to see where the networks of the future go, you look at where Google is today, and that will pretty much tell you where things are going to go. Kind of the theme of this session is cloud, right? And you look at the mother load for cloud service providers, for the Rackspaces of the world, the Verizons, the AT&Ts, the DTs, every other T in the world, the Amazons, is how do I move the enterprise applications as they are into my cloud? Because that's going to be bags of money that are going to transfer over, and they're going to make a lot of money. Cannot happen without the Nicira technology and without virtualizing the network. And this is every single service provider that we're talking to. They have to take the infrastructure that they have now and not make changes. It's got to have the level of security. It's got to have the level of functionality. It has to be enterprise private networking, the same level of functionality, but I need to do it in the cloud. Can't happen without Nicira. In addition to that, many large enterprises, Fidelity's, the Goldmans, Disney, other people that we're talking to, guess what? They look at themselves actually more and more like service providers. I want to build my own cloud for my own people, my own services, and guess what they're going to do? They're going to follow the leaders. They're going to look at the cloud service providers, and they're going to say, how are you building it the most cost-effective way, in the most agile way, and I want to copy you. And oh, by the way, I don't want to use Cisco, and I want to go and do what you're doing. That's what's going to happen, and it's happening, and they can't do it without Nicira technology. Interesting things that are starting to happen also is new service providers are going to emerge. They're going to take existing applications, and they're going to transform it by the cloud. PacWest Telecom. Anybody ever heard of PacWest Telecom? I never had. CLEC provider based in Oakland, California. The CEO, very amazing guy, 3 years ago made a bet on cloud. He said, I'm a CLEC and I'm never going to make any money, ever. I'm going to transform the company and I'm betting on cloud. Because I believe if I bet on cloud, I will have a dynamic infrastructure and a low-cost infrastructure that will enable me to offer up different levels of services, and I will be able to compete. And I'm going to think of myself not as a CLEC, but as a voice communications as a services company, right? I'm not going to be an infrastructure as a service. I'm actually going to deliver voice communication services. I'm going to host it. I'm going to build it on a cloud. And then I'm going to sell it to every other service provider out there. I'm going to be a carrier's carrier. And I'm going to go transform and disrupt this whole entire market. Made a bet 3 years ago. They came to us a year and a half ago and made a bet on us. You know, and when people do that, you look and you go, you sure you know what you're doing? We're 10 guys. Absolutely, we have no plan B. I'll steal a quote from someone who told me last night. Their plan B was to make plan A work. But what they did, they bet on this, and now they're delivering these services. They call it the Telastic Cloud. It's a combination of telephony and Elastic. They actually just beat Cisco in an extremely large call manager, hosted voice over IP deal. And they went to, it was a hotel chain, and they said to them, you know what, your big thing is you look at occupancy rates. And if you're really good, you're 75%. If you're not so good, you're 50%. How do you buy your voice communications today? I buy 100% capacity, and I host my gear. Right. What we'll do is we'll charge you usage-based, just like the cloud. Because my cost structure is so low, and in fact, I could charge it by hour if you wanted. I have the ability to go do that. I'll charge you for however many people you have in the hotel that day. So if you have 50% occupancy, I'll charge you 50%. They said, done, sold. The CTO of PacWest sold that deal. They don't even have a Salesforce organization. Sold that deal, multi-million-dollar deal. They're going crazy right now. Huge, huge opportunity to take existing applications and transform it by the cloud. That model, you can't do in the existing model. The things that actually, to me, gets the most interesting is actually sitting here the last session talking about the Middle East and how Twitter and Facebook and all these things that, 10 years ago, when we knew the internet was going to be big, you were bounded more by your imagination. You couldn't think of all these things that were going to happen. The same thing's going to happen with networking. We're going to unleash a whole new set of applications. I call it the iPhoneification of enterprise and consumer. Those mobile handsets, that's where new apps are going to happen. There's a company that we work with, guaranteed nobody's ever heard of them, called Televo. There are 2 guys in the US, old telephony guys, and 10 developers in India, have built basically a personalized, unified communication systems that is an iPhone app, and they're selling it. They just closed a 1 million-room deal with a large international hotel management firm. And where they're selling it is you check in, and so it could actually even work for this conference, but you check into an international hotel, and they wrote an app that uses the PacWest infrastructure in the back that when you sign in at the registration desk and you basically check in, you can download the app, and it is your communications infrastructure for that whole property. Everybody who has kids, what's the first thing you do when you go to an international hotel chain? You collect the cell phones, right? Because the kids will text, they'll IM, and you'll get the $1,000 phone bill. What they do is they use the Wi-Fi, and they use the back-end telephony infrastructure of PacWest to effectively cut out the mobile carrier in the local region. And so the hotel offers this integrated communication system that allows people to text to each other, instant messaging, make phone calls, schedule massages, get reservations at the dinner, whatever they want. The phone in the room rings, it rings your cell phone, integrated all in. The guests are excited because instead of a $1,000 phone bill, I get a $50 phone bill. And they're more connected. The hotel gains because they have no infrastructure. All the infrastructure is back at PacWest, and all they get to do is revenue share. Tolevo is ecstatic because with 10 guys in India, I was able to develop this application. Again, Tolevo doesn't own a single server. All 100% just developers. And then PacWest is happy because they're the back-end infrastructure. And of course, Nicira is happy because every phone that gets put in gets another dollar in my pocket. Tolevo, as a company, is going to end up being about $10 million a year in software subscription to Nicira. 2 years ago, I'd never heard of Tolevo. That's a pretty big thing for me. And there's going to be a lot more of that. And then I'd say the last thing is just security. Even the federal government has put a huge mandate on moving to the cloud. Again, why? Because it's a huge cost savings, and it's also going to allow them to get the agility of applications that they really want to get to. The problem, though, is there's this little thing called security. The way security typically has been done in client server is you wire up the network, and then what do? You take your hands off it. Because as soon as you change something, you then end up breaking about 8 other things. So the only way you can really get security is you lock things down and then you don't touch it. The problem is the cloud is dynamic by design. Things are moving around by definition. Servers are moving all over the place. VMs, virtual servers. And so now how do you provide security? Nicira actually got our start as a company 3 years ago. Our founder and CTO used to work at Lawrence Livermore Labs, did a lot of work with the intelligence community. We got a $1.5 million grant from the intelligence community to go do exactly this, look at security in a dynamic environment across a global network. How do you do that? That can't happen without us. So you're probably now sitting there, okay, so he's talking a big game. He's got all these 6 different massive opportunities. Okay, why Nicira? I've never heard of Nicira. Why you guys? It's really a couple things. One, it's really hard, the problem we're solving. Super, super hard. We have the best computer science PhDs from MIT, Berkeley, and Stanford working on this. These are not networking people, actually. They are computer science distributed systems PhDs. Because this actually, in reality, in a lot of ways, isn't a networking problem. It's a computer science problem. So it's hard. We've got the right people, and we've got a 3-year head start. So that's going to help us against a lot of other people. I think the other reason why us, too, is the other networking people have what's called innovator's dilemma. Even if they could do it, they would bury it. Why? Because if I'm Cisco or I'm Juniper or I'm any other networking provider, if I move the intelligence from the hardware into the software, what happens to the hardware? Gross margins come down. You saw what happened to Cisco when they lost 2 points of gross margin. What do you think happens when they lose 15 points? There's no way they're going to release something like this, even if they could do it. So it's pretty clear. What we're doing is not what I call a piece of the puzzle. This is a new puzzle. This is a new way of doing networking. This is a game changer. It's going to change all of networking. It's not just data centers. It's the WAN. It's from enterprises to service providers to federal government. This is monstrous. This is going to be big. It's happening. It must happen. And Nicira is going to become the most dominant networking player in the next 25 years. Thank you.